Only if they distract you.
He says that he puts it away. Just go in full.
You never know, okay?
Mine keeps telling me it's my turn.
What's that?
I was like,
It's not really good. It's a few minutes, not today.
we're gonna go ahead and get started here. I try to say all of the rude things up front to get that out of the way so that you don't have to feel like you're being attacked in any way. Don't have any technology in the class. I don't mind food as long as you're not distracting. I had a guy one time in class, he came in, he came right up to the front row, and so like nobody wants to sit on the front row. He came right at the front of the class, sits down, pulls out a bag, and pulls out a couple of energy drinks, and then he pulls out a loaf of bread, and he pulls out a jar of peanut butter, and a jar of jelly. And he just opens it up, and he starts making PB&J in front of everybody right there in the class through the whole thing. Like, just didn't care, no problem, he's all good. He's just enjoying life. So that was, from then on, I was like, I don't care if people eat in class, but you're gonna, be making your whole meal right in front of everybody. We'll try to put some rules on it. Does anybody have any questions in the class at all? Anything you need to know? I know last week we were all online. Anything that you need to know as far as assignments, things like that? Okay, well, you're never allowed to ask again. Okay, so there'll be some things you won't be able to experience from me. I know that there are some first semester students that are in this class, so you don't know me. You know nothing about me at all, and it's even difficult to gauge that from a Zoom call. So even if you were on last week, I hope that I do not bother you too much tonight, but you'll just have to strap in because we already missed our intro time. What we'll do is dive right in. I wasn't really able to explain so much of the class on Zoom, but this is a 3-hour class. You're all going to be stuck in here with me. And I will try to make that as interactive as possible. One of the ways that I do that is I try to spend time with a Q&A. And I will always spend time, depending on if anybody is wanting the conversation to keep going. We can keep talking about whatever is happening at the moment, but I'll always give you a break at the end of every hour. So this is a very common thing. I've got people joining. They want to watch me. This is so exciting. I usually don't have viewers, but now y'all are required to. So it's really boosting my self-esteem. This is a problem that we never had to encounter before COVID, but I do have a responsibility. We'll talk about things like this later in the class tonight, but I do have a responsibility as an employee of Urshan to uphold the policies and everything that administration and everybody, they come together as teams, they say what's best for everybody. So if you bring food to class, I understand that this class comes right after dinner. So I am not going to say you're not allowed to bring food. If you bring food, I need you to scarf it down as fast as possible so that you can wear a mask. I was sent this really wonderful video the other day that was the unwritten rules of COVID. I don't know if y'all seen this or not. I'm the old guy, so I usually see things like 6 days after y'all, and 6 days to y'all is like 6 years. So I might be 6 days behind. But it was like the unwritten rules of COVID, and it was this guy, he sits down to eat a bowl of cereal, and he takes his mask off, and is like, ah. And then the dude starts walking up, and that dude is the coronavirus. Starts walking up, and is like about to grab the guy, and he's like, whoa, 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 bro. He's like, your mask is off. He's like, bro, it's like an unwritten rule. Everybody knows you can't infect me while I'm eating. And he's like, fair. And like walks away. So I get that's like how everybody feels, those kinds of things. But in the classroom, you do have policies. You do have to be wearing a mask. And I know all of us are really good at finding loopholes around that. Every time you got to take a drink, and his drink is going to run out sooner or later. So just try to get through that as fast as possible. Get your mask back on. Some of you guys are blessed this semester. All the girls are just judging you on your eyes. They don't realize how bad your teeth are, that you don't brush them, that you're actually ugly from the nose down. You're making a lot of moves. This is good. So, anybody have any comments? I want to hear from you. What did you think about the first chapter that I had you read? Or let me ask it to you this way. Did any of you wonder why I had you read a chapter from Stephen Covey's book? Smith is nodding. Okay, so this is a book on this is a class on spiritual formation. And this is an apostolic school. So why in the world am I having you read a chapter from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? It's because I really like the chapter. It's a good book. There's going to be some things that I'll have you read throughout the semester, and I have a reason for it. I have a purpose behind it, and I won't always spell that out for you. I will give you the freedom, the flexibility to make your own conclusions, but all of it is intentional. So I'll ask you in this way, any of you, when you're reading through the chapter and you're thinking of it for spiritual formation, why in the world do I care about paradigms for spiritual formation? Any thoughts? I get that every year. There's always somebody that has never come across the word in writing before. And so there's this one time, have any of you ever like had those moments where you blank? I remember reading, a Ford Focus. I remember reading that and like just completely slipped, and I'm reading Focus, and I'm like, what in the world is Focus? It's just sometimes it hits you weird when you come across it in writing. Okay, so paradigms, why do they matter for spiritual formation? Any conclusions? What did you come up with? John?
Because people's spiritual lives are different from other people, and how they understand the spirit, so therefore they have a different viewpoint on it, which is
Okay, so yes, there is point one. You are going to encounter different people. If you haven't already, you will. Give it about a day, and you will encounter somebody here at Urshan, of all places, that they view their walk with God differently from you. Okay, so they view the different things. Now let me push back on this a little bit, and let me ask you this question. You live in an interesting society. Is there, within the realm of church, within the realm of Christianity, is there one view, so if you're thinking of a lens, is there one lens that everyone should conform to? Or do you always give grace to people's opinions? Any topic, just talking about Christianity.
There's some things that are absolute truth. You can't have a different view on.
Yes. So there are things that are absolute truth, and there are those things that can be viewed differently. But that, again, is going to depend on your paradigm. Okay, so you see how many layers are going on here? You do have to reconcile that everybody in this room is going to view things differently. And even to the point that there are going to be some that you encounter that they view God differently, but they shouldn't. And so paradigms need to change. Okay? You must give up your paradigm at some point. That's how it works. That's what you could call a paradigm shift. You look at things differently. You must change your lens. So if you have glasses, you need to change how you're seeing things. Somebody else, I saw some hands up. How else did you talk about? Anna?
Well, kind of like the paradigm shift, has to do with spiritual disciplines. So like you have to develop spiritual disciplines, and paradigm is also kind of like a pattern of design.
Yes.
Spiritual disciplines becoming one of those patterns in
Okay.
your life, and that's how it shifts.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought up the point of spiritual disciplines. By the way, I just want to let y'all know, if you are ever answering a question for me, you can pull your mask down, say your statement, put your mask back up. Okay? We actually just covered that in faculty meeting I got out of, and I was glad to hear that one because Anna's been mumbling at me for the last week and a half. So you can pull your mask down, say something, and then put your mask back up. Okay? I'm glad you bring up spiritual disciplines because that will be one thing that we talk about a lot in class, but I should prepare you. I have a different paradigm concerning spiritual disciplines than other people you will encounter. And I feel like it's served me pretty well. They haven't fired me yet. So we'll find out what you think in just a little bit. But spiritual disciplines, think of it this way. Should everybody have a prayer life?
Yeah.
Okay, so you found an absolute. You come across an Urshan college student that doesn't have a prayer life, and you say, you should have a prayer life, and they're like, no, that's my paradigm. That's when you say, you're dumb. There are things that everybody should conform to, but if you take a prayer life, now everybody should have a prayer life, but when should everybody pray?
Early morning. Let's
It doesn't
go.
matter. They can bring it up.
They can pray whenever. It doesn't matter. Does it matter?
First thing I do is
It depends on who you ask. It does matter, but it doesn't. It doesn't matter when an individual prays. It can be effective, but it does matter for that individual. Okay? Some of you are morning people. Some of you are not. Some of you that are not morning people, my wife and I, my wife is a 747. I'm a helicopter. It takes her a while to get off the ground. I'm straight up. You're not a morning person, so if you try to have a really in-depth prayer meeting, and you will find out by the end of the semester, I don't believe in just like shallow prayers. Okay? You should get to a place where you can touch God in a real way as soon as you start talking to Him. Okay? But I don't have real conversations with anybody after 10 o'clock. That's how I operate. If you try to talk to me after 9, my phone goes on Do Not Disturb, and I ignore the world. And it's probably best that I do because I'll tell you some dumb stuff after 10 o'clock because I'm not thinking. It's time for bed. Okay? But I wake up at 5 a.m. because I love the mornings because nobody can take the morning from me. Okay? Somebody can steal my evening, but nobody can take the morning from me. They're not allowed. But I wake up in the mornings, and that is when I can talk to God. So for me, it matters. For me, it matters that I pray in the mornings. It matters. But it doesn't matter if Anna's not a morning person. It doesn't matter. I can't impose that paradigm on her. I can't guilt trip her. I can't tell her. So spiritual disciplines are a weird thing in church because they are things that are important, but they very easily become points of shame. Okay? And so you have to approach them through the correct lens, through the right paradigm. When I was a freshman at Gateway, that was the first time my prayer life had to take a shift because I had a roommate. Some of y'all are going through that. I had to adapt. I had to figure out how I was going to keep my life with God on track. Now, let me just blow your mind right now. This is the most incredible thing you will ever. I mean, if I can just sell you the class right now. Are you ready for this? If you ever want to figure out your relationship with God, what is our relationship with God? Somebody give me like a really fancy Dave Norris term for it.
Covenant.
Ooh, you get 10 gold stars. It is a covenant. Okay, our relationship with God is a covenant. Now, let me ask you this, ladies and gentlemen. What is the number one illustration of a covenant we have in the world today? Marriage. And so, you will find most of the time when you are up against the wall and you are just trying to figure out what in the world is going on with your walk with God, you need to just stop and you need to start thinking about a covenant. I have a covenant with Lindsay. Now, none of y'all, to my knowledge, are in any kind of covenant, and you should probably behave as somebody that is not in that kind of covenant. But I am in a covenant with Lindsay. Now, what that means is that as we go through different phases in life, when we moved from our 500 square foot apartment to a house, our paradigm shifted. We were able to change different, where we ate food. I mean, we ate in the school cafeteria. When we first got married, we lived on campus. And we ate in the cafeteria. And we stayed up all night because the dummy wouldn't stop practicing the drums in the chapel. Okay, so wonderful things happen. I got to sleep. Okay? But when we move, things happen. But any kind of change in life, Lindsay and I, when we change, we go to a new place. Lindsay and I don't look at each other and say, okay, now I've recognized that at this point in our life, you're really messing with my standard prayer life. And so I don't know if I'm going to be in covenant with you anymore. Does that ever go through your heads if you're thinking about your future marriage? Like, I wonder what all of the things are that my husband's going to leave me for. Let me tell you right now, there's some backgrounds in this room. There's some things that maybe you are bringing to a relationship from your past, things like that. But I can tell you right now, my wife and I, sometimes we overdo it. People get uncomfortable. I hold hands with my wife everywhere I go. I make sure I kiss her in front of all of y'all. I make sure I hug on her. She's probably going to come to class in a little bit whenever she gets done with the meetings and stuff that she's in. And I love to just call her out and talk about how wonderful she is, everything like that. And one of the reasons I do that, I love putting my arm around her in church. Y'all aren't supposed to do that yet. You know why you aren't supposed to do that yet? But why I am? And do you know why it is my responsibility to do that in front of you? Is because our world is broken, and a lot of what you see all over the world is bad marriages. I want to let you know that a godly marriage is forever. And there is so much security that you find in submitting one to another. Okay? There's a key word right there. Write it in your notes. Submission. That covenant works because we are in it together. We are submitted. And so when something new happens in life, when we have to make an adjustment, when we have to make a shift, it's never from the perspective of, oh my gosh, I'm broken and this marriage is going to wreck. No, it's from the perspective of, okay, some things have changed. what can we do to work this, what's this new phase of life? How do we accomplish this now? Okay? You negotiate. You are in a covenant with God. And so there will be times in your life where you're going to feel, and this is what you can't let spiritual disciplines be. You cannot let it become your shame and your condemnation. You know what makes a marriage work? Communication. If Lindsay and I get in a fight, all I have to do is say, I'm sorry, can you teach me why I did that wrong? She's not going to lead me. But we can decide to either talk a second time or never talk again. That's always your options. Okay? In every relationship you have, if you're married one day, anything that you do, and even this is good leadership principles for you. One day you're going to be ministers and you're going to be working with somebody, talking with them. You have to understand, you can always either talk again or never talk again. Okay? Communication. You can't let your spiritual disciplines become the kind of thing that becomes so heavy that, oh, I'm off a little bit. Y'all just moved into school. They're throwing all kinds of policies at you of how you have to operate and live and do things. You're trying to figure out a new roommate. You might be switching right now and becoming a morning person. Because maybe you have all 8 a.m.s this semester. Maybe your school schedule is going to change in different ways. There's all kinds of things that happen in life. Every phase, everything that changes, you have to take the time, just chill out. Have the conversation, communicate with God, and shift your paradigm. Okay, so one illustration I can give is one of our TAs in the course is DJ Hill. DJ and I went to school together, and we were both interns at Brother Foster's church. And we were at Brother Foster's church. They ran us ragged. It was the best time ever. If you want to know, this is just a side note. In ministry, people will talk about being worn out, but you know what? I don't regret a second of it. I have more fun when I am just completely run into the ground. I have more joy. I have more peace. I have more energy when I'm serving the kingdom of God. Okay? I would rather do that than be bored somewhere trying to ask for a big cheese job. Okay? But we're sitting there, we're working like crazy. And so I couldn't pray in the mornings. DJ and I, we'd go to work, and then they'd be like, hey, we need you to paint the gym today. So we'd be painting the gym till 3 a.m. because they had to have it done before tomorrow. And so we'd paint the gym. We'd go back home, just like fall into the floor because, he's 1 inch taller than me. We're too big for all of the small beds that people try to give us. And so we just sleep on the floor. We fall into the floor. We wake up in the morning just in time to throw some clothes on and drive back to the church so we wouldn't be late for staff meeting and Brother Foster wouldn't be mad at us. Where am I supposed to pray? I can't be a morning person or a night person. What in the world am I supposed to do? What'd you say?
Pray while you go.
I can pray while I go, but DJ's in the car. That's weird. I don't want him to know that I'm praying that God would help me with my anger towards him.
Just pass her up the date.
Exactly. What I started doing is I actually decided to combine two things because I also had a responsibility to take care of my body. Okay? You have to understand every time I talk to you about something, and yes, I'm glad I thought of this. Good job, Cullen. There is an announcement I need to make. And I make this announcement in all my classes, but this specifically for you that have never been in a class with me before, I have a rule. And I have a general rule because I respect, more than anything in the world, I respect leadership, I respect the ministry. And so, one of my rules in order to protect that respect that I have is that you can ask me any question you would ever want to know. Anything on any topic, I will always give you my perspective, and I will give you my honest perspective on any question. Sky's the limit. However, if you ever put a name on it, I will not answer your question. I will move on immediately. I am going to give you honest answers, but it doesn't matter if you can assume that it is somebody I would absolutely agree with. Oh, I got another follower. Look at the Lord. It doesn't matter if it's you say, hey, I heard DJ Hill preach a sermon the other day. Or, hey, you know that keynote that Larissa preached in chapel? And wow, what a keynote. If you ever say something, if you start it out and you say, hey, DJ Hill preaching a message, this, I won't even let you finish the question. I'll say I'm not answering. And the reason for that is because I'm going to protect the way that you view the ministry. Okay? You can ask me anything, but as soon as you put a name on it, I'm done. I'm out. Okay? And that is because I recognize that there are some things in the kingdom of God that you can have a different view on. Okay? But I'm not going to get into battles where we're fighting over, well, this minister believes this minister believes this. Paul spoke against that in Corinthians. And he said, I thank God that I didn't baptize any of y'all, so y'all can't claim me for your own stupid, selfish ambition. And we're not about that. But there are differences of opinion, and I will answer those according to my opinion, but I will not compete with another person's. Okay? Anyways, that was all random. We're talking about prayer. What was I talking about? I know I was talking about my prayer life. Putting two things together. Okay, so the two things I wanted to put together is I also went through a time in my life where God was making availability for me to fast. Okay, and that was when I was a teenager. But when you're fasting, you have to take care of yourself. You cannot just go on a fast and hurt yourself. Okay, if you do that, then you're doing it wrong. And God is just as unhappy with that. It doesn't matter if you fasted 62 million days. If you die, God's going to be like, dummy. Okay? You have to take care of your temple. Okay? So when I was a teenager, I was a carpet cleaner. And there was one day that I was fasting because it was my fasting day. But I also was booked that entire day, and I collapsed going down the stairs with all of our equipment and everything that we were doing. Because I should not be doing that kind of manual labor while I'm fasting. You're going to hurt yourself. So DJ and I, not only was I having trouble finding time to pray, but we're also running ragged. And so what day in the week am I going to fast? Because I can't hurt my temple. So what did I start doing? I started fasting and praying lunch. I didn't fast a whole day. I wouldn't have been able to accomplish that. But every day, everybody else would go find, they would get together in the office. They're talking about where they're going to go out to eat. As soon as we were dismissed to go to lunch, I went and I got the master key to the church, and I would go to a different room in the church building, and I would make that my prayer room. And I would forget about lunch for the day, and I would pray. Yes?
Okay, so about fasting and stuff. Mm-hmm. Are you supposed to fast like one meal, or are you supposed to fast like the entire day? Like, how does it work?
Again, disciplines are one of those things that you can never let become a point of shame. And fasting is one of those. I have grown up, and I appreciate that conversations about fasting seem to be changing. I grew up in a world where I remember I had a friend as a teenager, and sermon after sermon at youth camp, there were things about fasting, and if you weren't fasting, then you were not a committed Christian. And my friend would try to fast, and she would get sick. She could not actually physically make it beyond 2 meals. And you know the story about the widow with the 2 mites? That applies to more than just money. If you physically are not able to go beyond 1 meal, let me tell you, in God's eyes, that 1 meal means more to him than somebody else's week-long fast. Okay? You work with God. You let God lead you. At the end of the day, when you're talking about fasting, it is about, and here I'm jumping ahead on things, but here's my one-liner. You fast whatever makes you king, or queen. Fasting is about positioning yourself. So you can fast food, you can fast other things in life like media, things like that, but you fast whatever is making you king. Now, the thing that's good about food is that it brings it out of you. I tell people, fast according to what you know, and when you don't know, fast food. Okay? If I know, okay, so let me give it to you this way. I don't know if I gave you all this spiel. I have 2 classes this semester, Tuesday night, Thursday night. And I don't do lecture notes. Like, I don't go in an order. So I don't know what I said to what group. So if I'm ever saying something, I just need somebody to wave at me and be like, you said that already. And I'll be like, cool, we're moving on. What was I talking about?
Fasting makes you king.
Fasting makes you king. The number one thing in spiritual formation is submission. Okay? You can't get beyond that. It always starts there. Always. There's nothing else. It always starts there. Submission. Everybody has different things, though. And so you want to know how to tell if you're submitted or not, what you're submitted to? Okay, so I want you to think real fast. What's the first thing you grab in the morning? What's the first thing you do every morning? That's what you're submitted to. If you get on Instagram before you say anything to God, you're submitted to Instagram more than God. If you check Instagram before you go to bed and you don't say goodnight to God, you're submitted to Instagram, not God. Okay? Who's the last person you text before you go to bed? The person that you actually is hoping you're the last person they're texting before you go to bed. Right? The person you think of last and the person you think of first. Now, you want to know what makes my marriage work? Is that I get down on my knees and I quote the Shema, the first thing before I even kiss Lindsay. That's what makes my marriage work. I can't go the other way around. Now, remember, I just said that I just told all of y'all that you need to talk to God. I'm not talking about having a prayer meeting first thing in the morning. But you need to have something in your life that every day you start it out, that you are in submission to God. You have to start it out and end it. It's in the Bible. When you lay down and when you rise up. Okay? So you can find out things. So if you're sitting here and you're like, wow, I actually, the first thing I do is scroll my Instagram first thing when I wake up. Well, let me tell you, you just found out what you need to fast. Because it has made you the God over your life. Because you're not submitted to God. But Instagram has empowered you to usurp God in your life. Instagram, or whatever the device may be, whatever the habit may be, the thing may be, the boo thing may be, whatever it is that is coming between you and God, it has empowered you to think that you do not have to submit to God first. And so it has made you king or queen. And that's what you need to fast. And so sometimes you know. But when you don't know, fast food. Because when you fast food, it comes out of you. One of my favorite things is I've talked to people before where they're like, I know just some people, this is a paradigm thing. They're like, some people, they're just different. And so I'm one of those people that's different. And fasting from food just doesn't work for me because I'll go like a whole day of not eating and I don't feel anything really spiritual from God at all. But my whole day is just awful because I'm just mad at everybody. And so fasting is just not my thing. Like, you just said it. Actually, you have an attitude problem. And we've all been trying to tell you, and when you stopped eating, God made it pretty clear to you because it came out. And they're like, no, it's just not my thing. No. You need to pay attention to the things. If you ever want to second guess yourself, if you're ever wondering, Lord, what is my number one temptation? Keep track when you're fasting, and you'll find out what your number one temptation is. Because when you're weak, that's when temptation is strongest. So that's why I say, when you know, fast what makes you king. When you don't know, fast food. Because when you're drained, you're going to figure it out real fast. Now, it might be the kind of thing where you figure it out real fast, and then you can go beyond that. So maybe you can only fast from food for a limited time. But if you pay attention during that time, and you're fasting, and you realize what it is that is off in your life that you are needing to submit to God, well, then make yourself some kind of fast that you can do for a long period of time. News flash, you can live without your phones. Maybe it's that you need to give it up. Just, you can walk around with a watch. You can keep time with a watch. You can have an alarm clock with a watch. Important things. Yeah. Get rid of it. Okay? There's things you can do. You can always find a way. If you really want to be in line with God, and again, this is the kind of thing, is if you're honest with yourself, you're sitting there, and somebody's saying, well, you know what, Jonathan, here's the deal. I can tell you right now, here's the problem in your life. It doesn't matter if it's going to be complicated or complex, if fasting from that thing is going to be really difficult. That's kind of the point. All of it's going to be difficult. All of it's going to be a sacrifice. That's why it brings out submission. It cultivates submission. Okay, we'll talk about cultivating another time. I want to talk about an illustration of a paradigm, real fast, because I'm doing okay on time. I need to give you a perspective of how paradigms change, okay? And so remember my previous statement. I told you that I absolutely respect ministers. I also am a pastor's kid. My father started a daughter work church. And so I've grown up watching a church start. I've been part of a large church. I have got to serve in a role in my ministry where I get to go preach at different places. I get to talk with students, and I get a perspective on a lot of churches. Okay? And I am an ordained minister in the UPCI. I've got the card. Okay? I absolutely support the ministry. Now, let me give you some pieces here that you have to understand and why in the world, Cullen, are we talking about paradigms in a class about spiritual formation? And aren't you kind of beating a dead horse here? We got it already. Not quite. KJV only. Have y'all noticed we're not a KJV only school? You haven't figured that out yet? You must not be an IPT. Okay? But there are pitfalls on all sides. Okay, and that's what I want to use this as an illustration. Okay? Let me give you my strong statement on one side. I collect Bibles. Okay? I collect Bibles because I just love the Word of God, and I like to think of other people groups and pray for them. It's not any kind of thing. If we could collect Bibles and the number of Bibles that I own, like I'm pretty holy right now. Got a lot of Bibles. That doesn't add to me, so I'm not trying to brag here. My sister is my number one supplier. My sister and my brother, or my father-in-law, are my number one suppliers. I don't collect Bibles. I collect Bibles in other languages. Okay? And so my sister is a missionary, and every time she travels somewhere, she goes into a new country or she's in a place with another dialect, she brings me back a Bible. And so she writes me messages in them, so I have little notes from them. To Cullen, a study Bible from Sweden, 2018. Love, Marie. So she signed all of these. Okay, so she gives them to me. But this is my strongest statement I can make about translations. What language is the King James Version in? English. If you are KJV only, then you have just told the people in Sweden they don't know about salvation. You've just told the people in Czech they don't know about salvation. Just told the people that speak Arabic they don't know about salvation. Philippines, German, French, Chinese, Korean, Russian. Could go on and on and on. King James is English. It is a translation into English. Okay? So, as a believer that God is the God of the whole world, I cannot be KJV only. I can't. Because all of these people must be saved. Okay? Now that's my strong illustration on the other side. Or on that side. On the other side, here's the point about the paradigm. You will never hear me talk about a minister who was convicted about the KJV and say, oh my gosh, you are an idiot. Why can't you just get with the times? Oh my gosh, you are backwoods. You are leading your church astray. No. Because, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, there was a reason. In the 20th century, there was a reason why ministers made a stance that the King James was the only version that they would stand by, and it was because the first alternative English translation that came out was agenda-driven. Not so anymore. I can tell you that honestly. I'm in a doctoral program. I have looked face to face. I have prayed with a man who served on the translation committee for the ESV and the NLT. Okay? And you cannot tell me that he does not love God, and you cannot tell me that he doesn't have a conviction for the Word of God. Is he all the way? Does he have all truth? No. But he absolutely loves the Word of God. So you can't assume that every other translation is agenda-driven. Okay? And just so you know, there is no translation that is translated by Oneness Pentecostals. So all of them, for us, need some work. Okay? All of them, we would have some preferences. Even the KJV, we would have some preferences on. I think I would translate that a little bit different. Okay? But the thing is the first one that came out, you have to understand both paradigms. The first one that came out, those men and women made a stance, and they were willing to die for it. And I know a lot of young ministers that think they're really cool with their education, and they can tell you all the reasons why the KJV is wrong, and they will not die for all the translations that they are really good at juggling. Okay? So don't attack somebody else's conviction when you have none. Okay? There are two sides to things. Do we need to correct things? Yes, but we do it with grace. Because those ministers made a stance for their time. But now the paradigm has to shift. Because we're in a new generation. We are reaching to a new world. A global world. Okay, so you have to think, we're able to have conversations like this. Think back 50 years. They didn't have phones attached to them. They didn't see things all over the world. They weren't part of a global world. So when they made stances against translation, English was the only thing they were talking about. But as time goes on, as things change, you have to adjust your paradigm. Even questions, I gave this as an example to the class on Tuesday. Even questions on things like holiness. Let me give you an example. I say holiness, and now everybody in the room is either like, oh my gosh, he's going to be one of those conservative people, or others are like, oh man, he's a liberal. This is going to be bad. You can't say holiness and it just be neutral. I mean, come on, we all love God. Get with it. When I went to school, we never would have talked about how to preach gender distinction to a world where men wear skirts. But y'all have to. Okay? Our stance on holiness is about gender distinction. Modesty, gender distinction. But as time goes on, paradigms change because you have to continue to reach the world. Okay? This is one of the things I love that Brother Bernard says, is that we can't become Amish, where you are locked into a time frame. Okay? We have a responsibility to reach the world, but we do it the right way. We still have to be modest. We still have to be gender distinctive. But when men start wearing skirts for fashion, how do we distinguish male from female? I don't know, that's y'all's problem. But your paradigm, because of that, because of the world you grow up in, your paradigm is going to be different from even some pastors that you serve under. Because when you start telling them that guys are wearing skirts, they're going to be like, are you kidding me? You dreamed about that. You know, that's all in your head. Like, no, it's happening. You're going to have to come together as generations. Paradigms are going to have to shift. All of that, paradigms, I cannot oversell this. Okay, you will learn from me over and over. Everything is spiritual. There is not an aspect of your life that is not spiritual. There is no separation of church and state. Okay? You can't all of a sudden be holy in a church service. You know why you fall asleep in the middle of sermons? It's because you don't actually love God. Okay? It's like, no, I fall asleep during sermons because I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Yes, and the reason you didn't get a lot of sleep last night is because you stayed up late socializing, playing video games, instead of going to sleep knowing that you would be in church the next day. Sorry, I will digress. But everything you do has implications. It isn't my secular world and my spiritual world. No, it's either toward God or away from God. There is nothing else. Every action, everything that you do, it's all either for or against. You can read it all throughout the Bible. Paul uses the language of spirit and flesh. John uses the language of hot and cold. There is nothing. And even when John gives a neutral, he says lukewarm, and that's just as nasty. I'm going to spit you out. I wish you were hot or cold. Look, Peter's getting with it too. Hey, everything is going to involve your activity. So all of it is spiritual. And so that's why I can give you a book on 7 habits of highly effective people, because if you can be highly effective, that means you can be highly effective for God. And one of the things that makes people highly effective as leaders, and if you are in this place right now, you are called of God. And if you are called of God, you are called to be a leader. Get over it. Okay? There's somebody watching you. Nobody is neutral. You don't get to just do things in isolation. It doesn't matter if your only aspiration is to be a servant in the church. Well, let me tell you right now, there's going to be a young man or a young woman that watches that servant in the church and idolizes them. And so you don't get to just be a neutral person in the church. You're a leader. Okay? Everything you do has implications. And so you have to approach this as paradigms will shift, things will happen, but you have to have core convictions, you have to have those things set, and you have to start navigating, okay, how am I going to look at these things? So now, we have 2 minutes left, and I'm going to say the rudest thing that I have said all night, and probably the rudest thing I'll say this entire semester, And I will apologize right now because you may have noticed, I don't mind stepping on toes. I don't mind saying things as they come to me. However, there is a certain negotiation that goes on between student and teacher. A certain social contract. Okay? And there's something that I feel convicted by the Lord to say to you. But I recognize that it's actually going to break that social contract. Okay? I need to just preface that up front. We got an email today that said we are already at capacity for our quarantine students. I'm nosy. I follow as many students as I possibly can on social media because I want to know if when you preach a sermon in Vespers, if it matches up with your lifestyle. I want to know because pastors want to know from me. I have a responsibility as a minister, as a teacher. Pastors call me over the summer and they want to know, is there anybody that I can have come to my church? And you know, the thing that I used to say and I used to get out of the way at the beginning of class was shaving. You know, I always tell guys, it doesn't matter if you have a conviction about facial hair or not, but you signed the honor code. And you're supposedly here to be a minister in the kingdom of God. And so every action you do from this point forward, when you sign that honor code, you're just showing me how much your name is worth. And you're talking to a man that believes that everything is spiritual. If you don't care about authority, and let me tell you right now, you will never have any. So good luck trying to fight the man right now, and then you try to preach to young people to save their souls one day. The fact that we are so careless, okay, you realize that if we continue to keep going, we got to shut down. You're going to go back online. But if you stop for a moment to realize how self-centered that is, because it's not just about if you have a preference of learning online or in class. You know that there are some students among you right now that I hope I can speak for. There are some students among you right now that they don't get to go home to a place with a family that loves God. So it might be nice to take your mask off in the dorm and to have fun for about 5 minutes and to do this or that kind of stuff. But as long as you keep breaking all of those rules, doing all those things that we're trying to put in place, it might be nice for a moment. But what about that student that's in that dorm with you right now that's going to go back to an abusive father? That this is their one moment they get to be. Everything you do is spiritual. Everything has implications. And I don't even mind. This is why, you know what? I hope that I can teach all this because it's a really good characteristic to have if you're going to serve God. Because he said, offense will come. I just broke the social contract because I told you to get your life together in a very real way. And I don't even care if some of you walk out of here boldly and take your masks off. Because all you're doing is showing me how much your name is worth. And that's between you and God. But be an honorable person. Be a submitted person. Let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. If you don't intend to follow rules, then don't be here. Because you being here and being a rebel is just going to send people home that deserve to be here. Following the rules may be boring. And I'm using masks right now to hopefully teach you a lesson that will be applied to all kinds of things in your world. There will always be rules. There will always be things that you have to do. There will always be somebody that you're submitted to. There will always be something that you don't agree with. Always. You need to learn to walk with integrity. You just accept the things. Because then you don't have to walk around with shame, insecurity, anxiety, wondering if they're going to call you in the office. Wondering, is Brother Cressman talking about me? The people who have been wearing their masks, they get to say, nope, he's not talking about me. You see how that works? You live with integrity. And you're really able to answer so many questions. You're able to walk with integrity, follow the will of God, and you don't look back over your shoulder with any kind of shame or condemnation. I hope that I'm giving you enough feedback, even though I broke the social contract. I have a responsibility to share that with you, because you are here to treat your calling with respect. And I want all of you to stay here. I want all of you to study. I want all of you to be in an environment where you can seek the face of God. Spread that message. Let other students know we're here to be honorable. What kind of witness do we get to be if everybody in Winsville says, you know, those Urshan kids, they are perfect to the T. They are good for our city. They are good examples of young people in our generation, in our world. There's so many opportunities to do things. Don't waste those. Always look for the chance. And that's what I love about COVID. This is the time to gain respect, because all it is a mask. I can wear a mask everywhere, and Brother Coulthard thinks I'm hot stuff. All I'm doing is putting on a mask. You can view it as a negative. You can view it as a burden. Or you can view it as, God, I'm going to do everything with integrity, and I'm going to look for the opportunities to continue to be a witness and to show you what I can. I want to let you go on break, but I have to say right now, I am now done breaking the social contract. I love all of you to death, and I have to say strong things every once in a while. But I believe in every single one of you. I pray for all of you daily. I call your names out to the Lord. And sometimes I even stop and say things specific. But I make sure that every one of your names are brought before the throne of God every day, and I know that you are going to change the world. I believe in you, and I'm proud of you. So now you can go on break. And we will come back at 7:05. For all those that are on the Zoom call, this is the first time we've done this in the live class. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to stop the video. That way I can make it one block, since we have 3 hours, so it'll be 15-minute blocks. I'm just going to stop the video and it'll start downloading. And then I'm just going to start it right back up. So as soon as you're kicked off, you can use the same link, get right back on.